So the United States now is banning oil from Russia because we want to sell more liquefied gas to Europe. That no one's telling you that in the news. That's a big part of it. We overthrew their government in 2014, and now we're arming Nazis to help fight Russia because of. And if you think there's any other reason, you're a sucker. And what I want to show you now is that we're going to Venezuela. We're begging Venezuela for oil. Now, remember when we were trying to overthrow Venezuela? Watch this. Remember, this is from the State of the Union in 2021. So this is just from a year ago.
We are supporting the hopes of Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans to restore democracy. The United States is leading a 59-nation diplomatic coalition against the socialist dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro.
Oh, look, they all applaud. Maduro's a dictator.
Maduro is an illegitimate ruler, a tyrant who brutalizes his people. But Maduro's grip on tyranny will be smashed. And
do we ever get tired of this script? We don't. Oh, this guy's a brutal dictator. We got to help the people. If you cared about people, you'd first start by giving Americans health care. You don't care about people, which is why you want to overthrow Maduro for oil. Okay.
Broken. Here this evening is a very brave man who carries with him the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of all Venezuelans.
Watch this.
Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. Mr. President, please take this message back to your family.
You see they all stood up? There's a Tulsi impersonator behind him. Look at that show. Look at that show. A heartwarming display of bipartisanship from Pelosi. I mean, sure, she didn't give him the standing knuckle rub, but it still was nice to see. So that's what they all cheered. That's the real president of Maduro. I mean, of Venezuela is Juan Guaido. That's the real president.
And, Juan Guaido?
Yeah. And here's Joe Biden. Joe Biden says Nicolas Maduro is a dictator. I strongly condemn his regime's violent takeover of the Venezuelan National Assembly, the country's sole remaining democratic institution. Joe Biden coming out strong, strongly condemning the Venezuelan strongman with a strong statement condemning his strong arm tactics. Here is Pete Judybug. He says the illegitimate takeover of the Venezuelan National Assembly is further evidence that dictator Maduro will stop at nothing to consolidate his grip on power. I stand behind Juan Guaido and the Venezuelan people as they strive to reclaim their democracy and defend their rights. Boy, even Pete Ladybug is standing behind Juan Guaido and the entire nation of Venezuela. Isn't that great? As transportation secretary, he really has nothing to do with any of it, but he's with them on Twitter. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? And there it is. Biden will recognize Guaido as Venezuela's leader, top diplomat says. Boy, this handsome young man is the true leader of Venezuela, and that's who we call president. Maduro is not our president of Venezuela. Venezuela Guaido says U.S. to continue backing him as leader. He's darn right we do. This is about morals and democracy and promoting moral democracy, some things you don't compromise on. Even Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in a statement Monday that the U.S. supports the Venezuelan opposition and Guaido, whom he referred to as the interim president. Look at that. Look at that. He said you can't trust. He said when Nicolas Maduro's government won a majority of seats, that election was flawed. That's what Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, said. He's the Secretary of State right now. He said you can't trust the Venezuela's election. Did you know that if you live in Venezuela and think the election was rigged, you can be censored or worse? Imagine living in a country where you could lose your very platform for questioning election results. Imagine that, Kurt. Let's all just take a second and try to imagine what kind of living hell that would be like.
I can't get my head around it.
Can't get my head around that you could be deplatformed and censored for questioning the outcome of an election. So why do I show you all that? Because the U.S. officials make rare trip to Venezuela discussing resuming oil imports to help replace Russian fuel.
Rare.
There you go. They should just play the Larry David music now.
Yeah, really?
The Curb Your Enthusiasm music should be playing right there.
Wasn't the last trip when that one guy went and tried to throw Venezuela himself with like 3?
That's right.
That was the last trip to Venezuela.
A group of senior U.S. officials flew to Venezuela on Saturday for a meeting with President Nicolas Maduro's government to discuss the possibility of easing sanctions on Venezuelan oil exports as the Biden administration weighs a ban on imports of Russian oil and gas, according to 2 people familiar with this. Ooh, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing after all that shit Biden and Trump were talking and Antony Blinken. That's embarrassing. Now they got to go with their dick in their hands. It's like, hey,
maybe Maduro's too.
Hey, ha ha. We were joking. Ha ha ha. When I said you were a violent dictator who oppressed his people, let me finish. The trip is the highest level U.S. visit to the socialist state in years and comes as the United States is seeking to isolate Russia for its invasion to Ukraine. Venezuela, the Kremlin's most important ally in South America, used to be a significant supplier of crude to the United States before exports were hobbled by domestic mismanagement and crippling sanctions from Washington. That's what it was, crippling. Look at the Washington Post doing a little fucking propaganda for them. In recent weeks, former American lawmakers have pushed for the United States to ban Russian oil and gas exports while lifting restrictions on Venezuela, home to the world's largest oil reserve. Now you know why we were trying to overthrow Venezuela? It's home to the world's largest oil reserve. And if they got a large oil reserve, it's just a matter of time before we got to bring their people some democracy. The U.S. delegation included Roger Carstens, the special president envoy for hostage affairs, Juan Gonzalez, the National Security Council senior director for Western Hemisphere affairs, and Jimmy Story. That's his name.
Story.
Hey, what's the deal with Jimmy Story? What's his narrative?
What's this guy's narrative?
The U.S. ambassador to Venezuela said one person familiar with the visit. The trip comes just days after Maduro and Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke over the telephone, about boosting the partnership between their countries. Look at that. Can you imagine? Can you imagine, though, having to be on that trip and you're the guy who has to ask Maduro for oil? Do you think it's like the guy from Firefest? Is that who they got to ask Maduro? The guy who organized, remember Firefest?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that guy's prepared to blow Maduro. I'm pretty sure.
That guy'll do anything for the company.
Yeah, Maduro's probably like, why are you asking me? Why don't you ask Juan Guaido, the real president? Okay. Here we go. During the trip, U.S. officials are also trying to secure the release of 6 former executives of Houston-based Citgo Petroleum Corp., an oil refiner formerly controlled by the Maduro government, according to a person familiar with the visit and spoke on. Hey, maybe Juan Guaido can free the hostages. I don't handle that. I'm not even president, said Maduro. The Citgo 6 were arrested during a business trip to Caracas in November 2017 and charged with money laundering, embezzlement, racketeering, and participating in organized crime. They denied the allegations, but you know they did all that.
Read the Citgo 6. Can you imagine?
The Citgo 6. That's who we have to beg for? The Citgo 6. We have to beg for him, and then that idiot who planned the Bay of Pigs invasion? By the way, meanwhile, Steve Donzinger's life is ruined. If you know who that is, that's a good. The U.S. officials are also seeking to negotiate the release of 2 former Green Berets who were accused in a plot to remove Maduro, as well as a former Marine who was arrested, you ready for this? While traveling along the Caribbean coast of Venezuela. That's how the Washington Post describes it.
Oh.
What was he doing? He was traveling along the Caribbean coast of Venezuela. Kurt, he was traveling. He was just backpacking with his kids.
That sounds like when that stupid videos that tell you when you get pulled over to say, I'm not driving, officer, I'm traveling.
That's how they framed it. While traveling. Really? Well, what was he doing? 2 former U.S. Green Berets are sentenced to 20 years and jailed for a failed coup in Venezuela. Matthew Heath, 39, was arrested September 10th, traveling along the Caribbean coast, accused of scheming with 3 Venezuelans to sabotage oil refineries and other infrastructure to stir unrest. Authorities said they found images of targets on Heath's cell phone, and they displayed pictures taken indoors of a grenade launcher, plastic explosives, and a bag of U.S. dollars they said was being transported by the terrorist cell. So, traveling along the coast, the U.S. and Venezuela broke off diplomatic relations in 2019 after the U.S. government recognized Juan Guaido as the country's legitimate president, accusing Maduro of winning re-election through fraud. Okay. U.S. officials have signaled that Biden administration will continue to recognize Guaido as Venezuela's rightful leader. But in an interview with America's Quarterly this week, Gonzalez said the administration is focused on negotiations rather than toppling. We really need the oil. We really need the goddamn oil, okay? All right? And at least we're offering a great deal. We still think you should be... We still think you should be Gaddafi'd, but we aren't going to focus on that right now. Deal? Is that a deal?
Actually, there will be a stick in your ass. Don't worry. But right now,
yeah,
we're just focused on your oil.
Yeah. Normally, we'd want to have someone debowel you. What is that? That's a word for that. What's it called?
Disembowel.
Disemboweled. We'd like someone to disembowel you. But
the hard way.
The hard way. Whereas the previous administration theory of change was based on regime collapse, ours is that only a negotiation will lead to concrete assistance. We don't want them. Come on.
That's amazing.
We just want to talk. Jesus.
Oh my God.
Did you suddenly realize that now our regime is about to collapse? Richard Metter says, hold on, why are U.S. officials traveling to Venezuela to speak with Maduro? I thought Guaido was the president. Laugh my ass off. Glenn Greenwald says, it's borderline amusing that the entire bipartisan United States political class spent years proclaiming that the real leader of Venezuela is President Juan Guaido, but the minute they need something, that's instantly abandoned for President Maduro. We'd like to meet with you. That's right. Oh. I can't wait till so when we're back to trying to kill this guy Maduro, hopefully Putin will be cool when we have a go to him. So that's it. President Maduro, we'd like to meet with you. Oh, by the way, U.S. is going to start importing oil from Gavin Newsom's hair. Also, I don't know if you know this, service stations are widening their signs in preparation. You see how they're widening their signs in preparation for higher gas prices? So there you go. There you go. There you effing go. Now you know the rest of the story and why we're getting oil from Maduro. And they're all together. There's no separation between Nancy Pelosi and people like Donald Trump or Mike Pence or anybody when it comes to Ukraine, Venezuela, all that shit. Hey, we got more dates for our 2022 stand-up tour. We're going everywhere. We're going to Dallas, Houston, Florida. We're going to Omaha, Des Moines, Pittsburgh, Columbus, Ohio, and Los Angeles. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets for all our shows.